Game of Thrones is an incredibly dense show in which every detail might be important. Some of those are immediately apparent and others take seasons before they become relevant. Here are 7 insane details in Game of Thrones that fans have noticed. Number 1. When King Robert Baratheon first visits Winterfell at the beginning of the show, Ned Stark and his family line up to greet their ruler properly. Robert appears stern and judgmental at first, before revealing it was part of his playful nature and happily greeting his old friend Ned and the rest of the Stark clan, even going so far to hug Ned and his wife Catelyn, shake Robb's hand, and ruffle young Rickon's hair. Ned, Catelyn, Robb, and Rickon. Now what do these 4 Starks have in common? Oh yeah, that's right. So did Robert accidentally curse each Stark that he touched, or are the Starks just more preternaturally fated to die grisly deaths? Probably a little from column A, probably a little from column B. Number 2. Early in their friendship, when they're both novices in the Night's Watch, Samwell Tarly confides in his friend his most foolish childhood dream. He's always wanted to be a wizard. But wizards don't really exist in Game of Thrones. I mean, there are people who wield magic haphazardly, like the Red Priests of R'hllor or the Warlocks of Qarth, but these are nothing like the wizards that Samwell has read about in his stories. But eventually, Sam meets Gilly and impresses her enough with his reading skills that all of his dreams come true. She tells him, "You know all that from staring at marks on paper? You're like a wizard." Hell yes. Tight. Number 3. Tyrion and Shae's love story isn't exactly Romeo and Juliet. She's a prostitute that he pays in order to keep him company, a fact that they constantly have to hide from his father, Tywin Lannister. Still, they seem to develop real feelings for each other and have real moments of tenderness in their relationship, like their first day in King's Landing. Of course, events conspired to tear them apart. Tyrion is framed for the murder of his nephew Joffrey, and in his attempt to protect Shae by driving her away, he fully convinces her that he doesn't love her at all. This feeling of betrayal drives her to testify against Tyrion and to take up with, of all people, Tywin Lannister. When Tyrion discovers this, he strangles Shae to death, and their final moments together in King's Landing mirror their first. Number 4. With Khal Drogo dead, Daenerys prepares a funeral pyre for him and declares herself the leader of the remaining members of Drogo's Khalasar. And in her speech, she promises to make all of those who would harm her followers suffer. Rakharo is originally just a bodyguard to Daenerys, but he becomes one of her blood riders when they trek across the Red Waste of Essos. Rakharo is sent away to find help and supplies that Daenerys and crew need badly, but he doesn't return in full. The manner in which Rakharo is killed clearly suggests it was done by a rival Khal, who's spitting on the notion of Daenerys acting as a Khaleesi. It takes a few seasons, but Daenerys eventually manages to find every single Khal gathered together in one place at the Kalar Vizven. When Khal Maro gathers all of the Khals under one roof, Daenerys rolls in and burns every single one of them alive. And they all die screaming, "Rakharo, you are avenged!" Probably. Number 5. Being a member of Stannis Baratheon's army rarely goes well. You have a 90% chance of being blown up by a wildfire, brutally killed, and or drowned at the Battle of the Blackwater. And if you manage to survive that, you have to trek north of the wall to fight wildlings and eventually go up against the winter storms and watch the burning of a child just for the honor of losing horribly against the Bolton forces. But one brave Stannis soldier made it through the battle against Ramsay Bolton for Winterfell, only to join up with Jon Snow for another low-odds battle against Ramsay Bolton for Winterfell. Hey, sucks for him, but gotta envy that rockin' beard, right? If only I had a rockin' beard. Number 6. The 2 potential heroes of Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire are Daenerys Targaryen and Jon Snow. Both are natural leaders, and they both fit into the prophecy mold of Azor Ahai. Born under a bleeding star can refer to the red comet that appeared after Daenerys' rebirth with her dragons, or the bloody Sword of Dawn that Ned Stark placed by Lyanna's bedside at Jon's birth. Also, both cleanly fit into the Song of Ice and Fire motif that is present in the series, Jon of the Icy North and Daenerys of the desert and full-on dragon blood and yada yada yada, you get it. Pretty obvious. So it's interesting to compare Daenerys' overhead shot in Misa with Jon's overhead shot in Battle of the Bastards. Like fire and ice, both of these images serve as contrasts to one another. Daenerys is being embraced by strangers who look up to her as Misa or mother, while Jon is being nearly suffocated by his own soldiers. Daenerys' presence represents a new dawn for the citizens of Yunkai, full of hope and light, while Jon and his men are at their lowest point, with death all but certain for those present. And yet, despite these differences, both images present a rebirth for each character. Daenerys finds her new role as a breaker of chains and a mother to all, while Jon finds renewed purpose and vigor in the depths of despair after being returned to the world of the living a bit earlier. Basically, these two are totally gonna f Number 7. The Red Wedding participants, Tywin Lannister, Roose Bolton, and Walder Frey, all meet their ends through treachery and murder. It almost suggests a karmic balance in the world of Westeros. Tywin Lannister is the first to go, shot with crossbow bolts while he sits on his chamber pot. Getting shot with crossbow bolts is something that Robb Stark should know a little something about. Next is Roose Bolton, stabbed to death in the gut by his own legitimized bastard, Ramsay. Was anyone stabbed in the gut at the Red Wedding? Oh, that's right, Robb's wife, Talisa, and their unborn child. Ugh. And finally, decrepit old Walder Frey has his throat slit by full-on assassin Arya Stark, after she feeds him his own children, no less. Yep, that is Catelyn Stark, though I don't think she ate any of her own kids. Let me check on that. And it might have only taken 3 seasons, but those Red Wedding folks finally got their due. And bonus, in the Battle of the Bastards, Ned Stark briefly returns to aid Jon Snow in his time of need. Hi, Ned.